Hello everyone, my name is Braden, this is Airless Quill 9, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the new general feats that appear in the Forgotten Realms sourcebook Heroes of Faerun. So in this particular video, we're going to talk specifically about the general feats. These are feats that you can pick up as early as level 4 in your career. And yeah, these will just help define some builds. Not all of them seem specifically Forgotten Realms specific, but we're gonna take a look at these feats and talk about what you can do with these and if any of them are decent enough to be instant takes. So let's go ahead and get to it. The first feat we're going to take a look at is Cold Caster. So with Cold Caster, you can increase either your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a max of 20. You learn the Ray of Frost cantrip, and if you already know that by any chance, you can learn a different wizard cantrip of your choice. You use the same spellcasting ability as the ability you increase with the feat. And then you also gain a benefit called Frostbite, which states that once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack roll and deal cold damage, you can temporarily negate the creature's defenses. The creature subtracts 1d4 from the next saving throw it makes before the end of your next turn. So there seems to be some niche capability with this feat. It isn't super powerful from what I can see, but I think Frostbite could potentially be a really neat benefit to use. I think there is the potential of you having Frostbite double with some other ability that negates saving throws, and so you could have a large bonus to negating a saving throw potentially. I would have to think of what you could do, but I think first off, what I am assuming this feat is meant for is to be taken by the Winter Walker Ranger, because this just seems very thematic for it. The Ray of Frost cantrip probably isn't something that a ranger would want to use all the time, but potentially it could be a decent option to have and is very thematic for that. But Frostbite is potentially pretty useful because the Winter Walker Ranger has the ability to deal 1d4 cold damage whenever it hits a creature with a weapon attack. So that would allow that negation for that 1d4 negation on a saving throw to happen pretty much every turn. So I feel like you could get a lot of use out of this, specifically playing a Winter Walker Ranger. And I'm sure there's some other builds that could probably benefit from Frostbite quite a bit. I'm certain you can make a sorcerer build that could work off of that pretty well. But yeah, this doesn't seem incredibly powerful, but I think if you really want to focus on a specific build that focuses on cold damage, you could make good use out of this feat. So I don't think this is super powerful, but there are some niche capabilities with this feat, so I kind of like what it provides at the very least. Next up, we have Dragon Scarred. This is another general feat. It has a prerequisite of you having the Cult of the Dragon Initiate feat. This was an origin feat that we talked about in the new origin feats video that came out just a couple days ago. But you can see here, what you gain from this is, first off, you increase your Constitution or Charisma score by 1 to maximum of 20. You gain a damage resistance. You get to choose acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. Makes a lot of sense. And then you also gain fearsome power. This states that when you deal damage to a creature as part of the attack or magic action on your turn, you can use the Dragon's Terror benefit of the Cult of the Dragon Initiate feat as a bonus action this turn. And as we learned in the last video, the Dragon's Terror is kind of a Well, it's a one target based fear effect, and normally it costs a magic action to use, but this particular feat allows you to use it as a bonus action instead. So this feat is actually really good if you really want to focus on being a Cult of the Dragon member, because it really makes that specific benefit of that origin feat a lot more applicable because of fearsome power. Being able to use that as a bonus action just really opens up your capabilities, because now you can focus on using your action to either attack or cast a spell on your turn, and now you can really gain use out of that particular Dragon's Terror benefit. So that's really nice. And then having the option to choose a specific damage resistance does have some interesting potential. You could really pair this up with any species that you want to take that already has a specific damage resistance. So that would allow you just to expand on the amount of resistances you have. And Constitution and Charisma are pretty decent ability scores to increase. So I think the Dragon Scarred feat paired with the Cult of the Dragon Initiate feat have some really good synergy. So this seems pretty good. And I mean, obviously, the only reason you would take this feat is if you have the Cult of the Dragon Initiate feat. But this seems like a pretty decent buff to what you get from that origin feat. So I'm quite happy with this. So let's go ahead and move to the next feat. Enclave Magic. Just like the last one, this feat builds off of the Emerald Enclave Fledgling feat. You gain a number of benefits from this feat. You can increase Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma by 1 to a max of 20. You have advantage on ability checks when taking the Influence action against with beasts, which is pretty applicable for being an Emerald Enclave member. And then you also gain access to the Beast Sense spell. You can cast it once without a spell slot, or once without a spell slot every long rest. And then you can also cast it with spell slots using the feature. When you cast it without a spell slot using this feature, it also doesn't require concentration, which is pretty nice. And then, of course, you can also cast it with any spell slots that you already have. So this is a pretty interesting feat. This also really builds off of the Emerald Enclave Fledgling feat in a pretty nice way. If I remember correctly, the Emerald Enclave Fledgling feat gave you access to the Speak with Animal spell. So this paired with that really makes a lot of synergistic sense, and you could have a lot of fun pairing these two feats together. I don't think this is an especially powerful feat, but this really makes sense to me. I would really want to pair this particular feat with the Emerald Enclave Fledgling feat and probably play like a Beastmaster Ranger, because this just seems very applicable to that specific character build. Or you could this even pairs very well with the Druid as well, because it just kind of makes a lot of sense with either of those two options, since they're really focused on nature and animals. So yeah, I think this feat is a lot of fun. It's not super powerful, but it definitely fits a specific build. And I do like feats that kind of focus on really taking advantage on promoting specific builds. That just is kind of fun in a roleplay sense. Next up, we have Fairy Trickster. This is an interesting one. So you can increase your Dexterity or Charisma ability score by 1 to a max of 20. You gain Fairy Trod Trotter when you take the Disengage action on your turn. Difficult terrain doesn't cost you extra movement for the rest of that turn. And then you also get Flustering Strike. When you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can attempt to fluster the target. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, DC 8 plus the ability modifier of the score increased by this feat, and your proficiency bonus, or have disadvantage on saving throws until the end of your next turn. And you can use this benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency per long rest. So, in my mind, this feat specifically seems catered to either a rogue. I think you can make a lot of use of this out of playing a rogue, since you can increase dexterity, have the saving throw for Flustering Strike scale off of dexterity, and then you have the ability to take the disengage action as a bonus action, so you can gain the benefit of that difficult terrain removal. So yeah, that works there. I can also see this potentially working in a neat sense for the Archfey Warlock, since you can increase dexterity or charisma, which are both potentially beneficial. Charisma would make a lot more sense because it'd be nice to have that ability scale at the same saving throw DC as your spell casting. But yeah, some interesting stuff here. I think you could do a lot with this if you really focus on getting the best use out of Flustering Strike. You could have some pretty interesting capability with that if you were to pair it with some of the spells that you want to cast. Fairy Trotter is probably not as useful on Archfey Warlock, more useful on a rogue in my humble opinion. But you could also do a pretty neat multi-class with an Archfey Warlock and a rogue. So I feel like you could make a really niche build with this particular feat. So I quite like it. Kind of fun. Next up, we have Genie Magic. This is a feat that gives you a couple benefits. The first of which is you increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a max of 20. And then you gain Wish Magic. This allows you to, as a magic action, cast a level 1 spell of your choice from the sorcerer spell list that has a casting time of an action. And then once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Uses the same spell casting ability as the ability increased by the feat. When you reach level 11, the spell you can cast this feat is increased, or is cast as though it's a level 2 spell slot. And then when you reach level 17, the spell is cast as though using a level 3 spell slot. So this seems kind of interesting. There is some interesting capability from this particular feat. I feel like this is meant to be paired with the Oath of the Noble Genies, obviously. If you are doing some type of conversion for 2024, you could even play a Genie Warlock and make use of this in some sense. Obviously, it's meant for the Oath of the Noble Genie since it is present in this particular book. But I think you could potentially do something interesting here. Granted, you are choosing a level 1 sorcerer spell, but it does give you a free casting of that spell, and you have the ability to cast it as a magic action. So I feel like I don't have the sorcerer spell list available just on the by my side, but I feel like you could potentially choose some really interesting spells to use this with. There's probably some spells that take longer than a magic action to cast normally, so you could have some fun capability with doing that. But there's some potential in this feat that I probably just haven't done research in. But I feel like this is pretty thematic for the Genie theme. So yeah, I don't know exactly how powerful the specific benefit is, but I think it has the potential of being something pretty interesting. It is fairly niche But yeah, it's still kind of cool. Next up, we have Harper Teamwork. This is a general feat meant to pair with the Harper Agent feat. So if you want to play a Harper, this is a nice general feat for you to take, since it pairs off of the Harper background and the Harper Agent feat that is granted from that background. So first off, you can increase your Dex or Charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain Withering Wordplay, which states that when you take the help action to assist an ally's attack roll against a creature or against an enemy, that enemy also has disadvantage on the first saving throw it makes before the start of your next turn. And you also have Inspiring Willpower. If you succeed on a saving throw to end the paralyzed or frightened condition on yourself, you can choose one ally you can see within 30 feet of yourself that has the same condition. That condition immediately ends on that ally. That seems like a pretty niche capability, at least that last option there. But yeah, there's some potentially interesting things available here. I'm thinking specifically from the Harper Agent feat, you have the Distracting Melody benefit from that, which allows you to take the help action and assist an ally's attack roll as if they were within 5 feet of you, but they can be up to 30 feet away. So that's pretty beneficial. That would work well with the Withering Wordplay, since that kind of buffs that slightly. The Inspiring Willpower seems fairly niche. I don't know how often that might come into play, but there's potential for that. And honestly, this just seems like a feat that really is meant to work with a bard, especially the Harper Agent feat, granting you a musical instrument proficiency and Thieves' Cant as a language. Just really screams both Harper and bard. So with dexterity and charisma being the ability scores increased from this, just makes perfect sense that this is meant to be paired with a bard character. So yeah, pretty niche option, but I like the thematics of it. I don't know if this is especially powerful, but if you really want to play that Harper aesthetic, this seems like a pretty niche feat to take. Lordly Resolve is another general feat that pairs with an origin feat, the Lord's Alliance Agent feat from the Lord's Alliance vassal background. So yeah, you gain a couple benefits from this, the first of which is you can increase your strength or charisma score by 1 to a max of 20, and then you also gain Standard Bearer. This states that as a bonus action, you choose up to 3 creatures within 60 feet of yourself that you can see. Each target can immediately take a reaction to right itself and end the prone condition, provided its speed is at 0. Additionally, you bolster the target's resolve, which lasts for 1 minute or until you have the incapacitated condition, and while bolstered, a target can't be possessed or gain the charmed or frightened condition. If a target is already possessed, charmed, or frightened, the target has advantage on any new saving throw against the relevant effect. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish the long rest. So yeah, this seems really niche. I don't know how useful this potentially is. It is only a once per long rest ability, so that is fairly niche. And I guess this kind of works towards the Lord's Alliance Agent feat in a way. It's still thematic with it, because the Lord's Alliance Agent feat is meant on aiding allies in a sense. So I feel like this is really meant to maybe work with either a fighter or a paladin build, since strength or charisma is fairly useful for either of those. But this just seems really niche. I don't know how often Standard Bearer will ever come into play. Granted, you could potentially make some interesting build off of this, but this does not seem like an especially powerful feat. Mythal Touch. This is probably one of the most interesting feats that I have seen. And this seems to want to be paired with the Mythal Keeper background from the Forgotten Realms source book. So you gain some pretty interesting benefits from this. The first of which is you can increase either your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a max of 20. And then you gain this benefit called Mythal Ward. It states that if a spell attack hits you or you fail a saving throw against a spell, you can take a reaction to roll on the Mythal Touched magic table to create a magical effect. The DC of any saving throws that are on this table are equal to 8 plus the modifier that you increased, plus your proficiency bonus. And you can use the Mythal Ward benefit number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. So this is a D20 roll. There are only a few options available on here. It looks to be 7 options, but some of these are pretty interesting. 1 to 2, you and each creature within 15 feet make a dex save, and you take force damage equal to 1d8 plus the level of the triggering spell. So, I mean, obviously that's not great for you, but potentially interesting. You and the triggering spell's caster form a telepathic link for 1 hour. That's kind of neat. Gravity is reversed in a 15-foot radius, 60-foot tall cylinder centered on you for 1 minute per the reverse gravity spell. That's kind of neat. You and the triggering spell's caster each make a Constitution saving throw, and on a failed save, a creature has the stun condition until the end of its next turn. That could be potentially bad for you. You gain a +2 bonus to AC for 1 minute, potentially turning the triggering spell into a miss if it was a spell attack. Next, you have any flammable non-magical object within 10 feet of the triggering spell's caster that isn't being worn or carried by another creature burst into flame, taking 1d4 fire damage and is burning. That seems pretty middling. And then lastly, you have the triggering spell dissipates with no effect, and the action, bonus action, or reaction used to cast it is wasted. If that spell was cast with a spell slot, the slot isn't expended. So not all of these are essentially useful abilities, but these seem really fun paired with the wild magic sorcerer table, because these are just like really random. And not all of them are useful abilities, granted, but you could do some really potentially fun stuff if you can get this to cause a really interesting effect on your turn. So I quite like how random this ability is. Obviously, this is not an especially powerful feat because of the randomness and because some of the effects are actually detrimental to you, but I quite like this flavor of feat. So I am kind of enjoying what this is putting out here, and I think you could make a pretty interesting character out of this. Order's Resilience. This is a feat meant to be paired with the Tyro of the Gauntlet feat, which is a feat that you gain if you're playing an Order of the Gauntlet member and take that specific background. You gain the following benefits from this feat. You can increase strength, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a max of 20. You can use research, which states that when you have the prone condition, you can right yourself with only 5 feet of movement. That's pretty decent, honestly. And you have Stronger Together. If you are within 5 feet of an ally that doesn't have the incapacitated condition, you and that ally have advantage on strength saving throws. You can use this benefit you can't use this benefit rather, while you have the incapacitated condition. So that seems kind of neat. Stronger Together is really meant to pair with the Tyro of the Gauntlet stand as one benefit, which states that when an ally within 5 feet of you is subjected to an effect that would push or pull it, you can take a reaction to prevent that ally from being pushed or pulled. And you also can't use that benefit if you're incapacitated as well. So idealistically, you're going to want to be within 5 feet of allies as often as possible, so you can pair that benefit with Stronger together if you're wanting to take this feat and you already have Tyro the Gauntlet. And then, yeah, this seems meant to pair with Tyro the Gauntlet pretty heavily. These aren't especially powerful benefits. I do like being able to right yourself from prone with only 5 feet of movement, though. That's pretty niche, but I can see it being potentially useful. And the ability score increases are all right. Pretty widespread. Wisdom and charisma, nice options, and then strength as well. You could choose some pretty interesting builds here. But yeah, I don't hate this feat. It's not especially strong, but I do see some synergy with the origin feat here, so you could potentially do something with this. Next up, we have Purple Dragon Commandant. This is a general feat that pairs with the Purple Dragon Rook feat, or you can also potentially take this if you have martial weapon proficiency as well, which is kind of neat. So you don't absolutely have to have the Purple Dragon Squire background, I believe is what it's called. That's where you get the Purple Dragon Rook feat from. So you do gain 3 benefits from this feat. The first of which, you can increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a max of 20. Very useful, since this is really meant to pair with the new Banneret Fighter subclass from this book. You also gain Encourage Ally, which lets you, as a bonus action, bolster one ally you can see within 30 feet. The ally gains temporary hit points equal to 2d6 plus the modifier of the ability score increased by this feat. And you can't take this bonus action, or you can take this bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. So that's kind of interesting. And then you also gain Last Stand. You have advantage on attack rolls while bloodied. I think this is a pretty useful feat, and I would definitely pair this with the Banneret Fighter subclass if you wanted to play that particular subclass. Both of these benefits, Encourage Ally and Last Stand, kind of pair really well with that subclass, because that subclass is kind of, well, I'm going to say it, the subclass is kind of lacking in ability potential, because most of its abilities are only once per short or once per long rest abilities. So having the ability to grant an ally temporary hit points, really good. Being able to have advantage on attack rolls while you're bloodied, also fairly decent. And strength and dexterity are the main ability scores that you might want to increase when playing a Banneret Fighter, so that makes a lot of sense. Also, if you're pairing this with a Purple Dragon Rook Origin feat, this also pairs pretty well with that, because if you're pairing this with the Banneret Fighter as well, and you have the Purple Dragon Rook feat, that gives you a proficiency in a skill, either Insight, Performance, or Persuasion, which fits that particular build. And then you also have Rallying Cry, which lets you, when you roll initiative and don't have the incapacitate condition, grant a number of creatures within 30 feet of you equal to your proficiency bonus Heroic Inspiration. So both the Purple Dragon Rook feat paired with the Purple Dragon Commandant General feat really work on improving the versatility of the Banneret Fighter a lot, and give it abilities that are really ingrained with the build for that particular fighter. These give it some additional abilities that it would not otherwise have. And I think if you do not take the Purple Dragon Rook feat and this Purple Dragon Commandant feat, and if you want to play a Banneret Fighter, if you don't take those feats and pair it with that subclass, you're probably doing yourself a disservice, because these are really meant to bolster that subclass a lot. So yeah, these or this particular general feat is really meant to pair with that origin feat and with the Banneret Fighter subclass. So these are meant to be used together, and you should take these if you're planning to play a Banneret Fighter. Granted, this probably is not meant for every single character, but you can get some this is honestly a pretty decent feat as well, just by itself. Because Encourage Ally, potentially useful, and Last Stand is really useful if you are really getting beaten down. So I quite like the power level of this feat. This is a very good feat for any fighter, potentially. Spellfire Adept. This particular general feat is meant to pair with the Spellfire Spark feat or any class that has a spellcasting or pact magic feature. But honestly, really consider this if you have the Spellfire Spark Origin feat, because it just makes a lot of sense to pair it with that. You gain 3 benefits from this. You can increase intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a max of 20. You gain Fueled Spellfire, which lets you once per turn when a spell you cast deals radiant damage. You can expand up to 2 hit point dice, roll them, and add the total rolled to 1 damage roll of the spell. And then you also have a Searing Spellfire, which lets you, when you make a damage roll that deals radiant damage, you can ignore resistance to radiant damage. Seems pretty niche, but honestly, I don't know a lot of creatures that have immunity to radiant damage, so this kind of just takes away the only real defense against dealing radiant damage as a Spellfire build. So yeah, this seems like a pretty good feat to take if you want to focus on making use of Spellfire spells and catering to dealing radiant damage. Obviously, this is only going to work for characters that going to deal a lot of radiant damage, but if you're wanting to focus on that, this is a pretty decent feat for that. So I quite like the versatility of that. Next up, we have Street Justice. This grants you a few benefits, honestly. You have the ability to increase either your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a max of 20. You, or your allies rather, have advantage on attack rolls against a creature grappled by you, potentially useful. Sturdy Knot lets you use chains, manacles, or rope to bind a creature and lets you add your proficiency bonus to the DC to escape or burst the chain, manacles, or rope. I looked into this. This could potentially be useful, honestly. The DCs for chain, manacles, and rope are fairly decent already, so being able to add your proficiency bonus to those DCs, depending on what level you are, really just makes it a lot harder to break out of those. So that's a very niche benefit there, very situational, but it could be the difference between a creature escaping from those types of binds and not. So that it's really interesting, to say the least. And then finally, the last one or benefit you get is called Tough Talk. This states that when a creature's hostile attitude doesn't impose disadvantage on your charisma intimidation checks to influence that creature. Potentially useful. But this feat is really meant to pair with probably someone who has taken the Zentrum Ruffian feat, or the Zentrum Ruffian Origin feat, I think is the name of it. Yeah. So you gain that feat from taking the Zentrum background. So yeah, this is pretty niche. I don't think this is an especially powerful feat, but it kind of works with that particular background in general. So Otherwise, I would really have to think of what build you can make, but there are quite a few benefits from this. And I feel like if you kind of put your mind to it, you could make some pretty generally good use out of these benefits. Obviously, strength or dexterity, you're going to want to focus on being a martial character if you're taking this feat, but yeah, I don't really hate this one. This could be potentially useful. You could also take this feat if you're taking the new the Baldur's Gate or the Flaming Fist Mercenary as well. I can see that pairing with that as well. So some pretty general usage out of this. Now we have the final feat or general feat rather. This is meant to pair with the Zentrum Ruffian Origin feat, and this is Zentrum Tactics. So you can increase your dexterity or charisma score by 1 to a max of 20. You gain Retaliate, which states immediately after a creature within 5 feet of you hits you with a melee attack, you can make an opportunity attack against that creature. And that's a really nice ability to pair with the Zentrum Ruffian Origin feat, because the Zentrum Ruffian feat has Exploit Opening as a benefit, which lets you roll the damage for an opportunity attack twice and use either roll against the target. So that just ensures that you're getting the most damage potential out of that potential retaliation. And then finally, for this particular feat, you get Versatile Merc, which states that when you finish a long rest, you can choose a skill in which you have proficiency, and you have expertise in that skill until you finish your next long rest. So that's really versatile, and that could potentially make you really good at something that you're already proficient in. Granted, you don't have to change that whenever you take a long rest, so you could gain it's nice to just have an expertise in something, but the ability to swap that around when you take a long rest really pairs well with you being some type of skill junkie in a way. So obviously, the Zentrum Tactics and the Zentrum Ruffian could pair fairly well with a rogue build, in my opinion, because dexterity is one of the abilities you can increase. Charisma also makes a lot of sense for a rogue, because I know a lot of rogue builds that play a lot more social characters, but obviously having dexterity as an option really caters to a rogue build. So yeah, this seems like a really decent feat to pair with that specific origin feat, and I think this really works well with a rogue build potentially, so I quite like this one as well. But those are all the general feats. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Sorry I went a little long on some of them. It's kind of like the versatility of some of these new feats, how they pair with a lot of the origin feats that are new in this book. There's just a lot of build potential with some of these, and I quite like the versatility behind that for them. It really gives you the opportunity to build very specific characters, and I like feats that are really doubling down on specific features, or doubling down on specific build styles, so that you can make a really interesting character. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what feats you really enjoy out of this list. And I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya.